So, hey everyone, welcome to another meeting of Working Group LTS. I am Dhaval Yogesh Panashali, your host today, and this meeting is getting recorded, and will be available on YouTube later. So, say what you want to say, and remember that your grandma is going to see it tomorrow. And we also follow CNCF Code of Conduct, so which means peace be awesome to everyone. If someone can let me know if they can hear me. Okay. Thanks, Nick. So getting started, thanks, Nick, for volunteering to be the note taker today. I have copy pasted the link of agenda in the chat. Please add your name and details as an attendee there. And there are some agenda items there that we can go through one by one. The first item is from me. A reminder, survey is closing in 11 days. So if you want to forward it to right audience, please do so. I think I got the last numbers from Stephen was that we have about 500 responses with 51% completion rate. I don't have any survey results, but that's just the snapshot number. Okay, the second, does anybody have any questions on the survey? I remember last time we discussed if we wanted to see if we can use our regular company forums to forward the survey. Is there any progress? Was anybody else able to do that?
I've been pushing it out in the whenever we've been able to have the non-US time zone meeting. But yeah, that's about all I've been able to do so far.
Okay. Cool. The next topic on the agenda, is there a roadmap for V1 Kubernetes V1 API? It's from me. I just wanted to get some consolidated information at one place so that we can understand what's the current state. In the past discussions, we have talked about a need for a V1 API for Kubernetes project, and I wanted to get some details. If anybody on the call has more details on what's the roadmap, is there a plan? Be awesome.
I can speak to that. So there's we have a lot of different APIs. If you're talking about the REST APIs, the first set is kind of the ones that are seen as required to bring up a cluster. And the APIs that I know of in that set that are not yet at V1 are ingress and the certificate signing request API. So those two in particular, I think pretty much all cluster setup tools use and are not yet at V1. Ingress has a cap describing the roadmap to V1. That is in progress. The goal, I believe, is to get the last API changes in place for 1.15 so that it can be promoted to V1 either in 1.15 or 1.16. The certificate signing request API is also, there's a kept in the works for 1.15, and so both of those I know have attention on them. There are other APIs like pod disruption budget, cron jobs. There are other various APIs, pod security policy, that are still in beta, and some of those are making motions towards V1, but some are not. But I think those are probably in a secondary category. They're not strictly required for bringing up a cluster. So the first priority is taking the ones that everybody is using and getting those to V1 stable. I can link to the ingress cap and thread, and then the CSR one is being worked on now.
So if we go in sequence saying, okay, V1 stable, so we will wait for V1 till all the APIs become stable, or all the APIs graduate from beta or alpha, to say V1 1.1 is released or V1 1.2 is released.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So the current, if I assume that the next version of V1 would be V1 1.1, when would we say V1 is released?
I guess
the API versioning is typically around a particular set of APIs. So like you have storage APIs or workload APIs or scheduling APIs. And so I think the requirement would be that the APIs you are using to support a particular cluster installation should all be stable, whether that's V1 or V2, or like they should be at some stable level. And once the only APIs you're using are stable, you have much longer deprecation periods that you can count on. It's like a 1-year deprecation period, and the replacement has to be in place. So I think we just want to make sure that when people set up a cluster, all the APIs that they have to use to set that up are at a stable level. They're not relying on beta or alpha APIs.
Do we consider
what I was hearing Davel asking was, am I really quiet? I'm sorry.
You're better now.
I'm wondering if I was hearing Davel asking if there was an intent to try to have everything be coordinated in its version, but I think on a big project like this, each individual API is doing its own effective semver, and they march along. So you might have one that's stable 1, another that's stable 2, but they don't have to all be in sync. It's just have them all be at a set of stableness.
Yeah, independent evolution is one of the goals of API groups, and so that's fine. The thing that is a signal to consumers is the individual levels. Like you, ideally, when you're building things that you're going to support long term, you only want to be using APIs that are also going to be supported long term.
So, Jordan, you think it feels like the ingress case is actually a good example here, where even once we move the V1 API to stable, people are already talking about what the V2 API is going to look like, and so the V2 API would then go through like a V2 alpha, V2 beta phase. And I'm sorry, I just wanted to use it for recording and stuff to say, hey, is this what you mean?
Yes, yeah. So the expectation would be that people who are interested in the latest and greatest things could jump onto the V2 alpha if they want to turn on alpha features in their cluster, V2 beta, but the people who are saying, well, we're going to support this particular installation for X releases or years, they should stay on Ingress V1 until Ingress V2 is available. But yeah, there would be a new cycle of alpha beta GA for the V2 stream for Ingress.
Okay, anybody has any questions, comments? 1, 2.
I'll just mention that the 115 enhancement cycle is going on right now. So I was watching to see what sort of things came in there. And there were a lot of graduations in 114 as well. I think like that's becoming a trend right now. So it's a positive thing. It's only going to eventually get.
I think you got cut off, Tim.
Sorry. I was just saying stuff is happening in 115 enhancements definitions, right? So we'll see what graduations are being proposed, but people are definitely pushing in this space lately. It's a trend since 114 especially.
Yep. And do we consider kubelet APIs, the REST APIs? I know they are not objects, but do we consider that API as stable? Is it V1? Is it going to change?
Which APIs are you referring to?
REST APIs, the APIs that it exports for metrics, etc.
No.
Okay.
Metrics there's an effort actually to define support policies around metrics. So they went through a fair amount of cleanup in the last couple of releases, trying to take out metrics that were known to be problematic, that would like your components, tracking all of the things to the nth degree. And there's discussions around like stable metrics and like putting guarantees around, these are stable and we promise to support them, and they fall under like the GA deprecation policy and things like that. But that is very much in the early stages. And I think what you're going to see there is a lot of the same, like as we want to lengthen the timeframes we support things, we actually have to think a lot more carefully about what is this metric? Is it supportable? Is it stable? Is it something we're going to want to delete in a release? And so it's going to kind of be slow going. My guess is you will see a subset of the metrics, like a pretty small subset initially, to be like, here are the ones that we promise to support. If you depend on other things, those metrics might disappear or change release to release, but we want to be really clear about these are supported and you can count on them long term. I'll link to that as well.
Thanks, Jordan. Anybody else, any comments, questions? Calling 1, calling 2, calling 3. Okay. The next topic is upgrade testing. A couple of meetings ago, we discussed about does the kube test have a way to test feature in version 1 and upgrade, and after an upgrade to test the behavior of the feature, was the same feature. So Jordan, I remember an action item around this. So do we have anything, or I'm also interested in this, so I can work on this too.
I apologize. I dropped the ball on this. I kind of got sucked into the modules black hole for the last several weeks. I know.
Nice presentation, by the way. Sorry.
Thanks. There are upgrade tests in place that do test features, but there aren't very many of them, and I don't think we have the ability to do different combinations of SKU. So it's very much a cluster at this version, test a thing, upgrade, test a thing. So you can't specify, like, I want a newer version of the controller manager and an older version of the scheduler, and then I want to run my tests, and then I want to swap them, and then I want to run my tests. We don't have that level of granularity. If someone wants to take the action item to engage with SIG testing and kind of find out what it would take to start to improve that, I am happy to hand that off. I'm trying to unblock people for 115 API stuff at the moment.
Yep, I can take a look at it. Another question around it was this: is there a defined design around upgrades that says this is how we are testing upgrades? This is how we upgrade in place versus rolling versus mixed combinations depending on what we are.
When we put together the SKU document last release, that was very much informed by how we are currently deploying and testing. And so the supported SKUs that we listed and the ways that we said people should upgrade map to how we deploy and test. That said, I think there are still gaps in testing every combination of those things. So what we document matches what we want people to do. But I think especially when you start talking about like 1 and 2 version old kubelets, and kind of that scheduler newer, controller manager older, and vice versa. Like those things we don't test every combination of today. The in-place upgrades, the feedback from Signode is that on minor versions, you're expected to drain your nodes before upgrading them. And that is what all the tooling for cluster setup and upgrade in Kube does. I think the item to fold that into the documentation is still open, so we should poke Signode to actually go put that in writing where users can see it on the website.
But just to be clear, Jordan, sorry, just to double check. So you're not expected to drain a cluster, just a node, an individual node?
Say that again.
In order to upgrade a cluster, you don't need to drain the cluster. You just need to drain an individual node, upgrade the node, and do a rolling upgrade, etc.
Yeah. So if you're upgrading a 10 node cluster, you could bring up a new node, then drain an old node. Bring up a new node, drain an old node.
Now, the reason I ask is because at some point there was some school of thought that believed that building a new cluster and migrating your workloads over there and then tearing down the old cluster was a good way to do things. I assume that school of thought no longer holds the majority view.
I don't think that is. If you are able to do that, if your workloads support that method of operation and you can do that, I think that has some benefits to it, but that is not how we upgrade and test today. So the minimum bar, the minimum requirement today is node by node. And that mostly has to do with like on-disk layout of things by the kubelet. That gives the kubelet the ability to change kind of its internal volume mount structure and things like that on version upgrades.
Yeah, that makes sense. And besides that, people are going to need to upgrade their kernels at some point, so they're going to have to be able to. It's difficult to upgrade your kernel without rebooting your machine.
I don't know that the idea of the drain a cluster was ever a majority view, but it's been a view that's been expressed vocally as potentially easier to engineer.
Yeah, I kind of look at the way we document these requirements as least common denominator. Like if we say that the way Kubernetes does things is side-by-side cluster migration, like you never upgrade a cluster basically. You set up a new cluster, somehow get your workloads over to the new cluster. If that's what we say the way is, then what you'll immediately see is Kubernetes components no longer supporting less disruptive upgrades. And so if we try to hold the line at like here's how you can upgrade in place. If you want to upgrade clusters side by side and your workloads support that, that's great, but we don't want to require that of everyone today.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I mean, just to be clear, if you're running on bare metal, you cannot afford to have twice as much capacity. So it's just kind of completely untenable in some cases.
And I think if somebody was going to say that it should be a preferred way, I think for that to pass muster in an open source community, you got to put out the tooling. You got to build as a part of the core project or within its org umbrella, whatever you want to call it, a set of preferred testing that stays under test that demonstrates that this way works. Otherwise, like today, kind of within what Jordan was saying, I think is that anybody who could do this has built themselves a bespoke system to make it so. And that wouldn't be a good outcome for a project to say that everybody who wants to upgrade has to build themselves.
I agree.
You're cutting out again, Tim, but I liked the direction you were going.
And I think the costs of having another cluster and then the time it takes from migrating all your services from cluster 1 to cluster 2 increases costs, and sometimes you might have 2 clusters of 2 different versions forever.
Yeah, so this sort of thing actually came up a lot when we were going through the SKU document. Like we want to be careful not to just with a stroke of a pen say oh, well, the way that half of our users were deploying, well, that's not supported. Don't do that. So like we want to actually understand how people are using things and if there are compelling reasons people are doing things. Quentin's point about like if you're running bare metal, like saying, oh, well, just double your capacity and then that's how you upgrade. Like that would be concerning to a good chunk of people. And so the point of the upgrade order and SKU is to give people guide rails to say, as long as you stay within these bounds, things should work. Like we will support you. If you come to us with a bug and say, I upgraded in the order you said and things fell apart, like we will look at that bug and we will fix that bug.
Yes, probably something that the document, I mean, you mentioned an issue where there's probably supposed to be a documentation on how we upgrade the design. If you could link that, Jordan, that would be awesome. And probably we'll look at seeing where the gaps are and plug them. Tim says a comment on chat that says he's looking at KubeADM.
For KubeADM, I can give you a quick update. So basically, we already have the infrastructure in place for performing incremental updates. So starting with 1.11, you can upgrade all the way to 1.14, as long as there are no breakages. And we are at the step where we basically have to set up testing for now. And I'm going to keep you updated in terms of our progress there.
Is there a cap for this?
No.
Okay.
I mean, because it's test infrastructure, arguably there should be a cap, but we don't have one.
I think in test infra, the design is to have a design proposal and then everybody comment on them. So yeah, if there is anything, just let us know. Otherwise, yeah, just the issues should be fine.
If there are any complaints, we can like change things, I guess. So something to Jordan's point, we actually do not support like testing different versions of components of the control plane components because KubeADM by design deploys all the components on the same node. So that's we basically do not skew them. But again, it's possible as long as you can modify a manifest and restart the component with a different image. But for now, we are not going to have these tests.
Anyone else has any other comments? This calling one.
Oh, I guess, sorry, for me, I guess as someone who, as a team who have built our own sort of both build me a new cluster and do my control plane upgrade tooling, the current version SKU actually does a really great job of meeting exactly what we do because our control plane upgrade process is just adding new members of the control plane to a HA control plane that are the new version and then removing the old ones once the new ones are up.
Do you have your own upgrader?
Well, not really. The upgrader is, because we do immutable infrastructure, the upgrader is, just bump the version that we deploy new ones, destroy the old ones. As long as the new ones come up before the old ones are destroyed, there's no service interruption.
You make it sound delightfully easy, Nick.
It has been a long, hard road to get there.
I was going to say, having done this a few times before, let's just say I'm impressed.
I think Nick undersells everything. He's like, oh, it's no problem for me to wake up at 2 in the morning to talk to you guys. No problem at all.
My citizenship gets revoked if I am not laconic and relaxed. So.
So with the way I have done upgrades in the past is I needed a orchestrator that was using these tools like KubeADM to actually do the upgrades and interface with the user to say, what do you want to actually do? Do you want to upgrade completely, or do you want to do a stepped upgrade? Do you want to upgrade individual components, or how do you want to do it? So I think that anybody has understanding of that tooling. I think I wrote something custom when I did my upgrades. And I don't know if with kubetest or with existing tooling we can do that, which would.
So kubetest is not a tool for managing upgrades for you.
Yeah.
It's just for basically a wrapper around the basically the test suite. That's it. That's kubetest. So it's in KubeADM, the decision was made to support a minimal viable cluster. And by that, we mean that if you want to move from one version of the control plane to another, you basically want to upgrade to the new version as a whole. We do not support like upgrading the API server only. Because after that, like if we leave this freedom to the user, they might create a cluster that's not supported. And could be broken as well. Because of the supported KubeADM topologies as well. Basically, we always deploy the components on the same node. And if you decide to move the API server to another node, then this is basically no longer supported by KubeADM. So if the community wants, to test such a topology, they basically have to use another tool. But kubetest is not the tool for that.
So I guess sorry, it's hard to take notes and talk. The thing I wanted to ask was that's clear for the control plane man, but in terms of the node pools, I haven't used KubeADM enough plainly since I've got my own thing, but does KubeADM like trigger node rotations, or is that left as an exercise for the user?
You mean draining on cordon?
Yeah.
So you have to perform it manually, and you have to be careful, like to leave, enough room for the workloads to still be active. And similar applies to HA. Currently, you have to. It's kind of a complicated topic to upgrade HA, but yeah, you have to basically upgrade one worker node at a time. That's the answer.
Yep. Okay, sorry.
Add to that, we do HA upgrades, and we use VRO for more of the orchestration, like a glorified bash tool to leverage KubeADM to do that, draining cordon and kind of roll through the whole cluster. So.
Yeah, for HA, we also currently have a problem where you have to be careful how you sync the joining of extra control plane nodes, because we don't support locks for the config map that's basically holds the list of the control plane nodes. But this is currently work in progress.
Anyone else has any comments? Calling 1, calling 2, calling 3. Okay, moving on to the next topic. Nick, you have the next one?
Yeah, so a while ago, I wrote up some short thoughts on, after we had some discussion on experience reports and maybe getting some people to come to the LTS meetings and give their experience reports. So I thought it'd be good to make sure that we sort of made sure that anyone who's giving experience report hits a reasonable set of common things so that we can take notes and compare apples to apples. I'll paste the link to the doc in the chat and in the meeting minutes. It's been there for a while. I just wanted to firstly ask if everyone thinks that sort of thing is okay, and then secondly, if we are going to do experience reports, let's. I think we had JP Morgan Chase maybe prepared to do one. That if we do have some guidelines, then let's not spend any more time and actually start collecting some experience reports.
So I scrolled through the last meetings notes, and I see JP, MC, Uber, Airbnb, Ticketmaster. Has anybody made any progress on them?
I think I might have slipped up. So JP Morgan Chase I got hold of, and I handed them over to Tim, and I think he was going to meet with Michael Payne and pick a date and do whatever. I'm not sure where he got with that. And I think the Ticketmaster stuff, I might have actually signed up to contact them, which I have not done yet. But I'm not looking at the notes right now, so maybe I should go and do that.
On my side, if folks like that's the document that Nick put together, I can forward to the couple people that I had talked to and see if we can slot them into coming meetings.
So if anyone needs more time to eval the doc, that's no problem. The doc is basically just broadly, let's pick up a bunch of the questions from the survey and make sure that we answer at least those sort of broad strokes things.
Yeah, I think, and we will also learn based on the first experience and what questions we ask when they present to us. So
yeah. I'm not suggesting it's a final document or anything. We should update it.
Yep, I think there were 2 action items. One was taken up by David on, and I think he has shared the contact from Zalando who can share the experiences. So I think the next is who's going to reach out to the contact and schedule one. So I can take it up. I can reach out to the contact on Zalando, keep David in the loop, and see if something can be scheduled.
Okay, what was the other one, Double?
The other one is with Tim and assigned to Tim. That is with Uber, Airbnb, and Ticketmaster.
I think I'm going to hold off on Ticketmaster because it seems like we've got a backlog of 3 already. So let's get through a couple of those and make sure that we've got some, successes, and then we can broaden that further.
I agree. Let's start with JP Morgan and Zalando, and we can go on.
Okay, so
my suggestion would be we make a little table in the agenda doc up at the top and call out potential future speakers for a certain date so that we have specific commitments and we don't over commit. If they all say like, yes, we can come in 2 weeks, and then they each only get a few minutes.
Yeah, I feel like an experience report really should be like most of the meeting. I think I actually seem to remember when I first joined, I ended up giving an experience report from me. And everyone asked me lots of questions, so I would guess that something like that will probably happen for everyone else too.
Yep.
I remember a similar thing for multi-tenancy that you did. I'm not sure if that. I don't remember the one for this one, but yeah. Just a thought that crossed my mind. So, I mean, one option would be to strictly segregate these experience reports and actually have no more than one per meeting, which I can see there being plus sides too. But on the other hand, it sort of seems like it might be useful to have, JP Morgan Chase, for example, have preliminarily spoken out against a long-term support model and have, their volunteering was to tell us why they wouldn't use such a thing, which seems like a valuable data point, but it could be interesting to have someone else who really wants one, and then at least have two real users kind of agreeing or disagreeing on matters. It could get contentious, admittedly, but seems like more value might come out of that. Just wondering what other people think.
Sorry, I'm just taking notes, Quinn.
I think it's good to have different perspectives, and we have seen proposals of mixed hybrid models where people who want to move fast can move fast. So it kind of shows us why people want to move fast, and also explains to us how they want to move fast. And if there are any blockers, what are those? So it's good to get perspectives from JP Morgan. And when people present their case here, I hope they find it safe enough that there are no conflicts.
Yeah, and I guess by definition, they're doing the disclosure in public anyway, so it's not like any of this stuff's going to be a secret. Okay, great. So maybe we should not be averse to having two of those reports. Seems like we can fit two into a 1 hour slot, so that shouldn't be too difficult.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome.
Let's move on to the next topic. Anybody else has any comments on the last topic? Going one, going twice, going thrice. Okay. Non-US time zone meeting total result. Nick, do we have the result?
Yes. So I have updated the non-US time zone meeting. It is, and forgive me, it is at 3 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which I am not good with the time zone math because it's complicated. It would be in about 12 and a half hours from now is the time. So I don't know what time that is in PST. Like 9 p.m. I think maybe. Am I about right?
About 10 p.m.
10 p.m. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's China-friendly time as well.
Yes. That was certainly the aim, to get a sort of Australia, China, and India at least friendly time, with the possibility that maybe people on the eastern side of EMEA, it might not be too early for, maybe.
So I think I recommend sending out an email about this change to the list, so that we can reach much wider audience. And I think there are Slack rooms with IN users and CN users. I think those are the names. So probably we could use broadcast there.
I've been broadcasting the survey there, so the doodle there. So that's how I've got some results there. I will promote that before I go back to bed now, to make sure that people actually show up to the meeting tomorrow. That would be nice. So I'll take an action there once I have finished writing notes.
So I had a question. Many times, I think when I attended the second meeting, I represented all the topics that we discussed in the US meetings. I have not been to any other non-US meetings. So how does it happen? Any recommendations? Is this pattern good?
So yeah, I mean, up to this point, the sort of pattern hasn't been great. I'll be honest. There's been quite a lot of meetings where there's only been, I've needed to cancel it because no one's shown up. I don't necessarily think at this point that that means it's a bad idea. I know that even just having the option of a meeting is pretty attractive to people. We have actually had some good discussions a couple of times that people have actually come. So I think if we can get a stable time that's at a time zone that's friendly for Australia, China, and India, then we're much more likely to get some useful info.
And how does it work? I mean, we take a lot of time discussing. I mean, I've seen most of our meetings take 1 hour in the US time.
Yep.
And if you take that content and put it back in the non-US time, then they don't have any time left for the topics that they look.
I think it's usually slightly faster to just tell people about what was discussed in the US meeting, and then sort of say, hey, have you got anything you want to talk about? I'm kind of hopeful that maybe I might be able to get to extend the experience report construct to the non-US time zone meeting, and that was the other reason for having the guidelines, was that way if not everyone in the US time zone meeting is present, everyone can be confident that that we can run one in the non-US time zone and still get useful information. So I think it's still kind of a bit of a moonshot in that I don't really have any evidence it is a good idea for anything other than, hey, it's nice, and you can actually contribute. But I don't think that anyone in the project has managed to nail this yet. So, I'll keep doing it until I can't anymore.
SIGDocs does something pretty cool where the fourth meeting of every month, they have a APAC meeting or Asia Pacific friendly meeting. And so it's the traditional SIGDocs meeting, but it just takes the place of the US friendly one doesn't happen. So that way it kind of encourages people to attend that way.
Yeah, okay. I will note that.
I think we need to be always aware that if we decide to create a poll or want to take a decision in this group, we probably should wait till the APAC region also responds, so that we can make a generic, we can make a complete representation in the decision.
I think just allowing a meeting cycle to sort of collaborate on documents, I feel is probably reasonably, at least a meeting cycle, if not longer. Is probably reasonably sufficient. But yes, thank you for the note, Tal.
Yeah, Nick, we have a couple of fairly energetic individuals in both India and China, and we also have quite a few energetic big customers, particularly in China. And it might take a little while, like they're not all suddenly going to arrive at the meeting next week, but I could start putting the word out, and I would imagine if you're prepared to be a bit patient and keep the meeting there and happening, that you could gather a fairly useful number of people through those two sources within a couple of months, I guess.
Yeah, I'll be honest, dialing into a meeting like in my daytime is significantly less imposition on me, so it's completely fine with me to keep going for as long as everyone else is happy for me too. Sorry, I was talking a lot. So,
anyone else has any comments? Going once, going twice, going thrice. Okay. Okay, I added a dev stable proposal doc link. Tim Sinclair has not been able to make it to this meeting, so if you have any comments to the doc, please make them. I was suggesting, I'm not sure if it's complete or ready, but I think it has some details. But I was thinking if we should have a separate meeting where we discuss this particular document, and maybe this week, so that we don't have to wait 2 more weeks. What do you all think?
Well, I mean, my availability to attend other PST friendly time zone meetings is limited. With the greatest of love to you all, but
I wanted to ask a separate question related to the survey. Sorry, I missed the beginning of the meeting. Do we expect to get results, answers to questions like how long the consumers of Kubernetes want the LTS cycle to be? Do they want 4 releases, 10 releases? For me personally, this is the biggest question.
Okay, I'll take a jab at it. See, I think when we were preparing the survey questions, we didn't want to use the word LTS in the survey questions because we wanted to derive that data from the results. We have questions like what version of Kubernetes are you using in production? What versions of Kubernetes are you using? What do you mean by upgrades? What do you mean by a release? Do you think it's a Kubernetes? What do you think Kubernetes 1.7 is a release, or each API version is what you considered as a release? So those questions will give us good idea on, is it really challenging for users to do upgrades? Are they, I mean, so I think a lot of those questions answers will give us answer to the question of what's a comfortable period that people want an LTS to be, if there is an LTS. I think the question was not just about LTS, it's about supportability to understand all the pain areas that users are facing today. But yeah, there is no direct question that asks how many years of LTS do you want.
So basically, we're going to have to extrapolate the information from the survey indirectly.
Yes.
I think it's probably more fair to say that the survey was intended as an initial stab at getting some data from the community to sort of firstly answer the question, is LTS the right model? You know, I mean, I think I get the impression that most people think that something like LTS is probably the right model, but we didn't want to sort of, you know, put words in the community's mouth by saying, yes, it definitely is. That's why people like JP Morgan Chase were like, we don't care so much, super valuable data points.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else has a comment on that? Okay, going once, going twice, going thrice. So do we want a second meeting? I mean, do you want a special meeting for the devs table? Are people interested in discussing this? Because I think it will take otherwise 2 more weeks. And it's good to get feedback sooner in the system. I can initiate this discussion on Slack to get everybody else's opinion on that, and feel free to respond.
I mean, I'm okay with the idea of another meeting. Yeah, I'm not going to say you can't have one because I can't be there, but you know, I'd certainly like that if there is one, then it gets recorded and stuff so I can watch it. Yeah,
I hope. Yeah. I think the idea is to record it and make it part of this meeting. I've seen this approach used in other SIGs and sub-projects where when they had to discuss our specific proposals or specific docs, the group collected again and met in a separate meeting. So I'm going to pause for a second and let someone else speak.
I would just say I don't feel strongly about whether we do it in another meeting or just like actually try to get it on the schedule and do it in 2 weeks. I think if it actually happened in a couple of weeks, that would be fine as well. It's more trying to understand, is it a schedule conflict with this time or just general busyness? If it's general busyness, then I don't think adding another meeting is actually going to work. If it's a conflict with this time, then I'm fine meeting out of band as long as it's recorded. I do know Tim has been pretty heads down on getting the conformance stuff going, so it might just be a bandwidth issue.
So when I spoke, I think there was a conflict, but I'm not sure it's a regular conflict or otherwise. So I can get that info, and if it's not, if it is a regular conflict, I can float this question back in Slack, and then we can have a separate meeting to discuss the doc, if everybody agrees. All right, that was the last topic on the agenda. Anybody else wants to bring up Any other topic, any other questions? We have 6 minutes left.
I did want to mention the discussion around pulling Docker shim out is progressing on the design. So that was one of the dependencies we had that had a particularly incompatible support timeframe. So if you have interest in that, go take a look or weigh in on the discussion there. So that is making progress.
If you could drop the link to that in the minutes, Jordan, I would massively appreciate it.
Yeah, has there been any timelines decided for that, or is it kind of just like in flight, and when we can get it all together, that's when it lands?
I'm trying to remember. I think the first step was just settling on what we wanted to do.
Gotcha.
These discussions are happening in Signode, right?
Signode is the primary owner, and I dropped a link to the proposal.
Okay. Anybody else has any comments? Any things to add? New topics? Going once, going twice, going thrice. Okay. Thank you, everyone. This was another great meeting. See you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye. Have a good day.